In 2002, the craze for so-called reality TV was at its height. Many members of the public suddenly longed to appear on shows that exploited and often humiliated them, in return for sometimes considerable financial rewards, and more rarely, a sustained media career. Yet it was almost more important in the post-faith society of the 2000s to get the attention and validations these programs seemed to offer, no matter the humiliation. Even a fleeting 15 minutes, it was thought, would be the antidote to increasingly empty modern lives. It's hardly surprising that a huckster or two would try to attach themselves to the reality TV craze. Perhaps the most memorable example of this came with the Nick Russian con. Detailed in the Channel 4 documentary The Great Reality TV Swindle, the whole episode became a curious slice of reality TV about reality TV, and revealed an equally curious man, suffering from many of the same pathetic delusions of the reality TV contestants he would con. Nick Russian. Russian had been born Keith Gillard in Surrey, England in 1977. Originally changing his name to Jack Lister in his 20s, he then became Nikita Russian. After dropping out of a university English course and failing to become a published writer, by 2022, he was working part-time at a Waterstones bookshop in Piccadilly, London. At some point, he decided that reality TV would be where he would make his name, whichever name he happened to be using at the time. Early that year, he began placing ads, notably in The Stage and the Evening Standard, inviting, quote, characterful, resourceful, and energetic people to apply for the chance to, quote, raise profile. £100,000 awaited the winner. Much more money in 2002 than it is today. Over 1,000 applied and auditions took place on Ravens 8, a former Thames boating island, which by then had become a conference and events centre. This would be the one seemingly professional aspect of the proposed show that would hook in the reality star wannabes. Nikita Russian Productions, or NRP, ran the auditions. Nick enlisted friends who posed as psychologists and runners, putting contestants through their paces in a series of tasks, including baking a cake without ingredients or a kitchen. From there, 30 lucky contestants would compete for the top prize in the as-yet unnamed reality show, codenamed Project MS2. Each contestant was emailed and told the show would require a year of their time. Contracts were to be signed, food, accommodation and leisure money was promised, but the time away necessitated them giving up their jobs in rented flats. At this point, common sense should have kicked in. The email came from a free email provider. The contracts contained numerous spelling and grammatical errors, yet the lure of fame and small fortune blinded them all to the warning signs. The 30 were divided into 3 teams, imaginatively named 1, 2 and 3. Each team would meet at a different location in London on the 10th of June 2002. They could bring no money or credit cards with them, and had to set up a bank account to which Nick would have access. When the teams assembled in front of volunteer cameramen and were addressed by Russian, the bombshell dropped. Their challenge was that in a year, they had to make £1 million. First order of business was to find accommodation for themselves for free, for a week. Whilst a few of the more practical team members realised the whole thing was a take-on, others initially carried on, shocked and confused no doubt, but still labouring under the misapprehension that this was a real show. Contestant Louise Miles even commented in the later documentary that some of her team members thought she was being negative when she suggested the whole thing was a scam. Others commented that if they had to make their own £100,000 prize, why would they bother doing it on a TV show, and not just do it themselves. Team 1 retired to the flat of a team member's friend to consider their options. By coincidence, the friend recognised the name Nick Russian as a fellow employee at Waterstones. That revelation set alarm bells ringing. While several team members now left the supposed show, remaining contestants demanded a meeting with Russian, which occurred outdoors in central London the following day. In a tense encounter, Russian was forced to admit that no TV deal for the show existed, yet still tried to claim that his company would put existing footage in front of TV companies, and a deal would follow. Teams 1 and 3 realised the game was up and packed it in. Team 2 stayed together, refusing to let their dream die. They had by now decamped to the floor of the flat of their volunteer cameraman, Tim Eagle, and began filming their own reality TV show, complete with diary room, where they vented about the whole situation. As if all this wasn't bizarre enough, Nick Russian shamelessly turned up at the flat, involving himself in the supposed reality show, and despite the criticism of the angry contestants, generally comported himself as though he was the victim of the situation. Eagle didn't want things kicking off, so he kept a lid on the anger of the conned contestants while Russian was there. The next day, he contacted the local news channel, hoping to drum up interest in their show, but also expose Russian as a fraud. The following day, they locked Nick in the flat, forcing him to speak to journalists who arrived to cover the story on the 12th of June. Russian scarpered straight afterwards, and Team 2 carried on until the 14th of June, but realised the dream was over and went their separate ways. Unsurprisingly, it emerged that NRP Productions existed only in Nick's head. He had shafted a childhood friend, identified in the documentary only as Mike, by using his address. Mike would hilariously recount how he worried that he might be besieged at home by enraged reality TV show contestants seeking vengeance on Russian. The staff at Raven's 8 were also taken in, giving him use of the premises in return for advertising in the non-existent show. Lucky victims were able to move back with their parents, while others faced a scramble to rebuild their lives with new employment and a roof over their head. One contestant, Debbie Lee Driver, contacted a real independent TV company, who took up the story and followed the contestants' attempts at confronting Russian and getting back on their feet, which became the documentary The Great Reality TV Swindle. Equally unsurprisingly, Russian had gone to ground. One of the most indefatigable team members, Louise Miles, who had confronted Nick at the time of the scam, found out where his parents lived, but they denied he was there. In a tragicomic moment, another contestant, Daniel Pope, with the help of the TV company, was able to doorstep Russian and extract a self-pitying apology. Completely understandably, Pope commented that it was taking all he had not to punch Nick at that moment, while Russian stood with a self-pitying look on his face. Media reaction to the documentary was mixed. While most blamed Russian, others criticised the contestants for abandoning all judgment in the face of a hoax that was fairly obvious, if one cared to do even the slightest bit of research. That they were blinded by fame says it all about society, and not too much about them. That may be a little bit harsh, and doesn't diminish Nick Russian's near total responsibility for the fiasco. A second documentary in 2022, The Greatest Show Never Made, followed up on the lives of some of the contestants in the present day. Russian, who was by now calling himself Nick Quentin Wolf and claiming to be an author, also gave an interview. In another interview with The Times, a 45-year-old Nick confessed only to being, quote, naive, and that things were done, quote, the wrong way. Despite claiming to be a changed man, the self-absorption and total lack of empathy still ran deep. At one point, He even tried to claim that he was working for the benefit of the contestants he duped. While the blame of the whole sad debacle needs to be laid squarely on the man responsible, sympathy for his dupes can only go so far. It is said, you can't have a con man without greed. In this case, it was a greed for more than just money. The result was a cautionary tale. Fame or money can never fix emptiness in lives. Only positive fulfillment can. It is a lesson that seems even more unheeded now than it was in 2002.